Here. So I guess we can probably get started now. So welcome to the summer 2026 CBE Town Hall meeting. So for those who haven't met me, I'm Brian Pfleger. I'm the R. Byron Bird Department Chair for this year. And so what I'm going to walk you through over the next couple of minutes is just some updates on things that have been happening around the department over the last year. The last time we met as a town hall was back in January, and so a lot of the things you're going to hear are just in the last actual couple months since that recording. So this is the slide we use to introduce ourselves to future, seminars that we're giving at different places, and so we like to highlight the growth in the faculty, and that continues to happen. So we highlight here the 9 newest faculty members that we've recruited. And then also some of the exciting renovations and things that are happening. So in the renovation front, locally, we're getting ready to open new computational laboratories for our process systems engineering groups. And so that's Joel Paulson, Victor Zavala, and Stiliani Avramidou. So that's going to be a wonderful ecosystem for them to be able to collaborate, work on modern computing infrastructure, sit-stand desks in a beautifully well-lit, naturally lit room. So they're really excited to get in there. And then just a floor above that, we're doing the same thing for some of our molecular simulations groups. And so that'll be Jeff Greeley, recently hired from Purdue, Manos Mavrakakis, and Mike Graham will all be in that type of computational suite on the third floor. And so we'll talk about the other renovation projects here in just a minute. But since it's May, I thought we would start with our graduation, which just took place a few weeks ago. So it was a wonderful day in Madison, beautiful temperatures. So a lot of folks showed up. They said that the crowd in the stadium is actually starting to approach capacity limits because of the way that the stage, limits the seating. And so it's wonderful to see the continued growth of the university and all the family and friends getting back to visit and see their students celebrate such a momentous day. Many of you have had the chance to meet Dean Ranjan. He loves to take selfies. If you're there with him for anything more than 30 seconds, you're probably going to get involved in one. And it was no different this year in the graduation ceremony in the Cole Center. He ended the ceremony with that UW salute with a selfie that got the majority of the students. If you're wondering, the Chemie contingent was back here in this quadrant. So at that time, we had 12 Chemie PhD students graduate. Many of them got to walk across the stage and be hooded by their advisor, which was a really nice touch, something that we've continued on from Ian Robertson's time as dean. And so there were 71 bachelor's students who walked at this period. We'll have approximately another 30 or so graduate in December. And so the annual graduation rate has been about 100 students at the bachelor's level for the last few years. And so that moves you from who's finishing to who's coming in the fall. So we'll have 21 new PhD candidates that will be joining us. So this is Josh Abraham, one of my former PhD students, who got to experience the hooding since he graduated off cycle. He got to experience the hooding right here in the department front office. So we got a bunch of nice pictures. I think the exciting or perhaps terrifying news coming is the largest undergraduate freshman class coming to the College of Engineering. And so it's well over 1,700 new students that are going to be coming to campus. And out of that, about 150 of them are going to be chemical engineering focused for their studies. And so this photo comes from last August when Dean Ranjan again took the same selfie with a little wider lens, but with the entire incoming group of students in their fresh engineering Badger t-shirts. So this year we had a lot of different events around the campus. So the most recent ones was to celebrate Joel Paulson and his arrival on the faculty. And so he was bestowed to become the Gerald and Louise Batiste Associate Professor. And so that's a wonderful honor. And so Jerry and Louise were kind enough to join us for that weekend, and we had a wonderful couple of days spending time with them and introducing them to Joel's group, as you see here in the lower right corner. And so Joel, honestly, we're going to talk more about him in a few minutes, but he is a Energizer bunny, I guess is, for the dated reference, constant energy, and has been making a rapid path through all the different aspects of UW life, trying to meet people, and probably is now overwhelmed with the collaboration opportunities that he's seeing. This is exactly what we expected and what we're really excited to see what he's going to do going forward. So other faculty news. So Reed Van Lane is going to be promoted to full professor in the fall. Stiliani got her career award from NSF, the announcement, the day before the Dean's IAB. So I was able to slip that right into the final slide deck in the 11th hour. So we're really excited about the work that she's doing in the sustainability or in the process systems arena. Marcel Schreier had a wonderful year. So he got named as a Sloan Research Fellow, one of the big chemistry awards for assistant professors. He was also recognized as a Vilas Associate, which is a wonderful local award that helps support his group through giving him flexibility to repurpose summer salary for other wonderful things. Victor Zavala was named a new award in the college this year, the College of Engineering Culture Champion Award, and he was also named a senior member of the National Academy of Inventors. And then Bramy Lenhoff, alum of the department, he was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering this year, and so he's been a longtime professor at the University of Delaware, a former Haugen professor here in the department, and a true friend to many of us, particularly on the biotech side of the department. And then lastly, and probably definitely least on this list, I was elected to the AIMBE, so that's the American Institute of Medical and Biological Engineers College of Fellows. This is a recognition for the top 2% of engineers involved in medical and biological research. It's an organization out of Washington that's really exciting because as part of the induction ceremony, you get to spend a day up on Capitol Hill meeting with representatives. And so here are the four Wisconsin inductees from this year's class here in front of Ron Johnson or Senator Johnson's office. And so we got to meet with representatives from Tammy Baldwin, Senator Johnson, as well as Mark Pocan, the local UW-Madison rep. And so it was really fun to talk to them about the exciting things that are happening on campus, how they can support the ongoing research and educational missions of the university. And we encourage them to come see some things in person. We hope to see that in the near future. So in addition to the faculty news, there were some awards handed out this spring for our TAs. So Kira Keenan from my group took first place, Lily Collin from the Huber group took second place, Erin Gwaltney from the Lynn Research group took third, and Evan Grothin took fourth. That's left to right there. And so those are fantastic students who contributed across the teaching missions. Kira was involved in the fermentation class, and several of the others were involved in some of the core courses across the department. These are awards that are recognized from votes by the students, and so it's student selections of the best TAs in the year. Now, one of the other big things that's happened across campus, and particularly local to Engineering Hall, is the ongoing work to upgrade our infrastructure. And so the utilities project that runs an entire new steam tunnel across the front of Engineering Hall is hopefully entering the 75% done phase. We are excited to finally maybe see our doors be able to be used in full completeness. It's been kind of a challenge to get around the campus, but we're really looking forward to having what comes next. This drone shot from last summer shows you what things look like and probably what you remember. Unfortunately, this is what took away the engineering quad, but now if you were to look across the spaces, you'll see the stairwell tower, the elevator tower, some of the flooring, and a lot of the footings for the new Philip A. Levy Engineering Center coming into view. And so this has been really fun for me because that crane that we just passed is sitting right outside my window. And so I've seen everything from the panels that get used to cast all that concrete in place to people's lunches being delivered up to the top of the Findorf Tower there, to strangely some porta potties flying through the air and being placed at different parts of the site. So it's been an entertaining couple of months hosting visitors here in the department office. But if you haven't seen the renderings of this, it's going to be a fantastic building. We're really excited about that. And the dean has asked me to join a committee of faculty and staff members across the college to help start talking about who's going to populate that building. And so we hope to have answers to that long sought question in the very near future. And so if you're curious about more about the project, or if you want to learn more about what's happening right now, there's a live webcam, and you can go from these links here to those pages. Sorry, I lost my clicker here. So other exciting news from the spring. Last January, I showed you this slide where we were ranked in the U.S. News and World Report program rankings. The graduate program was ranked 12th. The bachelor's program was ranked 13th. The new rankings for the grad program came out, and so with the change to spring, we also see a reduction of a number there. So we've now joined back into the top 10 graduate programs, which is really exciting. I think a lot of students say, hey, top 10 programs, that's something I want to what I'm looking for. And so I think it's going to help in recruiting things or recruiting efforts next year. I do want to caution a little bit. That ranking is having us tied for ninth with two other programs. And so if you remember, we were 12th. And so we basically moved up a spot. And that was more or less from us moving up a little bit and others coming back in terms of the overall score. That doesn't, diminish the efforts that we've been putting into growing the program. And I think this is the start of what I hope to see as a continued climb in the rankings over the next few years. So one thing that we're hoping will help guide that is an effort that Victor Zavala championed this year. So Victor is my executive officer for the department. He and I have been working together hand in hand for the last 2 years to try to set things in motion for the next 5 years and beyond. And one of the things that we did last year in the strategic planning exercise was said it's time for us to take a top to bottom look at the undergraduate curriculum, noting that many of the structural things have been in place since the 1970s. And so a lot of that came from digging out photos of curricula and guides that we used to construct the history wall, and we noted how strangely that much of that structure remained the same. And so we started this at our faculty retreat last August and said, let's form a task force to look at the major aspects of the undergraduate program and what we should be doing to better prepare students as we enter this new AI age of college education. And so, what Victor did was assembled a team of 9 instructors, so faculty and instructional staff, who participated in a year-long campaign of meetings, deep research dives, and discussions about topics. And what was very exciting was this was a diverse group of people with very sometimes polarizing opinions on topics, but we got everybody together in a room and talked through upsides, downsides, strategies, pitfalls, all of these different aspects. It started primarily with the idea of what do we do with Summer Lab? We know that if I want to get out of this job, the easiest way for me to do that is to cancel Summer Lab, and I'll have a line of alumni at my door with pitchforks almost overnight. That wasn't the motivation for what I'm about to tell you, but it was a recognition that this is a unique educational aspect amongst all chemical engineering programs. There are very few other programs who have anything close to what we offer our students in that 5 week summer experience. And so what we decided was that that's something that differentiates us and is a brand setting distinction. And so we want to steer into that, embrace it, and try to market it to current students so that they understand what they're learning in the classroom now is going to have relevance again when they get to the summer lab experience and how that's going to cement their time and moving forward into their chosen career paths. And so we want to make that the center of the Wisconsin brand going forward. So I guess you can view it as this is a reaffirmation that this is the critical component of our program. Now, along the same lines with that Wisconsin brand, we said, okay, what is it about our program that we stand behind? And I think there are 2 or 3 aspects that were clearly identified. We are a strong fundamentals program. We are going to push people to understand the theory, everything that goes underneath the principles of kinetics, thermodynamics, control theory, mass and energy balances, all of those core topics. We have to have strong fundamentals. But students are not necessarily interested in taking those classes. They need to see how they interface with then the exciting research and career paths that are going forward. And what's a challenge for chemical engineers is to say in a succinct one sentence, what is it that a chemical engineer does? Why should your student, your son or daughter, decide to come to UW and study chemical engineering as opposed to any other engineering program? And so when you sample our alumni and what they're actually going off and doing, there are many, many diverse career paths. And so what we're trying to now think about, how do we bin that down to a small number of what we would say are emphases? We've been calling it tracks in the past, but things that would then motivate students who have perhaps want to go to traditional oil and gas or others who want to go into a more AI-driven high-tech industry. Those who want to go to pharmaceuticals or those who want to go to biotech, consumer products, government, and other business entrepreneurial efforts. So there's a wide spectrum of these. And what we want to make sure we're doing is that the courses that they're required to take have relevance to all of those tracks. And so we created some grids to start defining whether or not these core courses were essential, peripherally involved, or very weakly involved. And where things were weakly involved, we started to say, well, maybe those should be preferred electives. And so the concept here was to try to create as much flexibility within the curriculum that provides the foundation, the core rigor that we think all chemical engineers need, but also then have the freedom to go off and explore the nuances, the interdisciplinary nature of chemical engineering. And that's something else we think is important to our brand, that we truly work across all disciplines in all areas. And that's not something we want to lose. And so to get that flexibility, we're going to need additional courses. And so continuing to build educational innovation, right? Things that are going to be new. How do we embrace this AI? I don't know that any department or any university has figured this out. It's going to be a continuing conversation. We had a wonderful workshop organized by Joel and Assistant Professor Rose Sersansky, who are experts in artificial intelligence methods. They level set the faculty. So before we can start to talk about policy conversations, people need to know what this stuff is, what they can do, what it can't do. And so that one day or afternoon seminar was a fantastic first step in trying to understand how we are going to innovate as we move into this new age. I think the analogy that was set is the most efficient way of moving something from one place to another is a human on a bicycle, right? And so if we think about AI as the bicycle, right, how are we going to teach students with these tools to go beyond what we could have done if they were just walking the same distance with the package? And so it's akin to other advances in technology, and that's the way we're trying to reference it. We're not trying to be afraid of it. We're not seeing it as a replacement, but rather as another tool in our arsenal to help provide this unique experience that is the UW brand. And so with that, we're going to have to create and modernize. So we have create new content, but you can't stuff it into the most complex credit-loaded major on campus. We have to find other flexibilities. We've got to consolidate certain topics or reposition things to be preferred electives to allow for students to go in those areas. And so three core courses that we decided we need to create are a physical chemistry for chemical engineers, a course that's going to look at molecular simulation and molecular properties and how that influences what larger processes that they're working on and how that kind of bridges between some of the graduate level things that we're doing in molecular simulations and some of the traditional statistical mechanics and quantum mechanics techniques. Mathematics for chemical engineers, we realize that students will go from taking differential equations in their first or second year to control theory in their last year, and they haven't learned Laplace transforms or used them recently. And so there's a lot of math that needs to be caught up. The same is true in sort of how you go from differential equations to transport theory. There seems to be a little bit more of a deficiency in our students getting into some of these complex theory courses. And so we think it may be better for us to teach some of those concepts in a consolidated, focused effort where the students are using examples from chemical engineering applications to motivate those problems. And then lastly, Joel and Rosie are really passionate about building this AI for chemi. So how do we use these algorithms to advance our discipline? Not using ChatGPT, but rather how do we actually do this to better design processes for whatever industry or application you're looking at? And so this is a set of 4 recommendations that the faculty recently endorsed. It's a strategic planning exercise for the undergraduate curriculum, and we're now tasking the curriculum committee to come up with an implementation plan for the next 3 to 5 years and hope to see some of these things really come into fruition for the next generation of students. Along the same lines, the college has been really interested in doing strategic planning with the new administration. And one of the efforts that I got tasked with working on with Susan Hagnes, the former chair of electrical and computer engineering, soon to be the dean of Case Western University, was coming up with a set of research moonshots. And so moonshots are often used as a target. How do you motivate people to get to a particular task or a particular accomplishment? You could also view these as more strategic guidelines of where we want to invest and push research directions around the campus, reinforcing strengths, identifying places where we need to invest to broaden our capabilities here in the College of Engineering. And so we led a task force of discussion of elements across campus. That was really exciting to see chemi faculty sitting at the same tables with faculty from around the college having conversations about the future of their research area or research areas in general. And out of that discussion came a whole series of topic areas that a committee of faculty from each department got together and sifted and winnowed down to these final 6. So there is engineering tomorrow's cures, how we're going to use AI and personalized medicine to develop the next generation of therapeutics. How do we take renewable energy. So whether it's fusion, fission, or other um, uh, low cost or clean power sources, how are we going to then transport that to people across the world, and how are we going to use that capability? How are we going to take the algorithms that have been developed in AI and turn them into actual technologies that interface with your everyday life or with researchers' everyday lives? How do we use AI in automated experimentation to advance and dive deeper without having to put the person power in place? How do we make quantum science practical? I think everybody's been talking about the potential of quantum science for a long time. We want to see what it takes to actually make these promises a reality. And then securing critical resources. So this was an interesting one because there's folks who are very interested in making sure we have access to clean water, right? As a Wisconsin, a Great Lakes state, right? We are stewards of the water that is in Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. How do we best keep that for the future to ensure that everybody has access to those resources? At the same time, that's a problem of getting the water, the solvent, away from small concentration contaminants or other chemicals. Well, that's actually the target of other groups. And so whether it's rare earth minerals that we need for catalysis or different types of small chemicals that we would need to produce in more sustainable ways, how do we get those things away from aqueous solutions? And so we kind of viewed this as one whole area about securing critical resources for the country. And then the last one is feeding the planet. This is a challenge that I think many people are motivated by, right? Where we have a growing population. How do we get the nutrients and the food quality to the people who need it most? And so that's going to take both production side, agricultural side things, but also how do we actually do some food science for the masses, right? That's going to be an important step. And so these six moonshots are going to be the target for investment. So you may have conversations about the dean about which people in your worlds are interested in these areas and would want to see advances in the College of Engineering. It's going to lead to the formation of teams across campus. So a lead for each of these moonshots is going to be identified from the College of Engineering, and then hopefully co-leads for people from other colleges. So feeding the planet, for instance, would be a natural connection with the folks in CALS in the food science or agricultural departments. Folks with the Engineering Tomorrow's Cure would be a natural fit with folks from the medical school. And so how do we build these teams for the future to prepare for centers or other large activities? And I think that CBE, as you see here on the right, has really strong ties to many of these, weaker ties to others, but certainly accessible to just about everything that's in this moonshot portfolio. And so we really hope that this is going to be something that we're really proud of in 5 years, that we said 5 years ago, hey, we want to tackle these important societal problems, and we can point to advances that were made from investments in this period of time. And so if you want to learn more about the moonshots, the dean has placed a new website on the research page, and you can click there to see more about the details of each of these moonshots. And so that brings me to the end of my portion of my presentation. My joy now is I get to introduce Joel Paulson a little more formally. For those who haven't met him, he has degrees in chemical engineering from the University of Texas, Austin, this little small institute out in Boston that seems to be a producer of many great PhD students, including many of our own faculty. He then went out west, so he understands what Berkeley time is because he did a stint there in the College of Chemistry. Again, mostly looking at control theory and the intersection of AI, Bayesian optimization, and other types of advanced machine learning techniques. He started his independent career at the Ohio State University, where he rose up to be the HC Slip Slider assistant professor. And then we were really fortunate to recruit him away from Ohio State last year to come join our faculty. And so he, as I said, is a constant ball of energy with tons of activities. It was really fun in his interview. He actually explained a Bayesian optimization algorithm that I had used in a collaborative paper with another colleague here, better than that colleague ever had. And so that was a really a joy for me. And so, yeah, Joel has been recognized with the NSF Career Award, AICHE's 35 Under 35 Award, and many other recognitions that we see are only going to continue to grow as he builds his group here at UW. So, Joel, why don't I stop my slides? I'll let you take over and then tell us a little bit about the things that you've got going on in your research group. And then we'll take
Yeah,
questions after this.
yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, Brian. Let me share my screen. Let's see. All right, can everyone see those slides all right? All
Sure
Yes.
right.
can. Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, wonderful to meet you all. So, want to tell you a little bit about the work we're doing. So, I've been working on the branding of my lab, and I've recently come up with this title, the Guide Lab, because I think that's a lot of what we do. We guide experimentation. And I think this tagline here will tell you a lot about what we are very interested in, right? We're trying to build AI systems that make the process of discovery and design faster, more efficient, and more interpretable. And as Brian mentioned a little earlier, our real goal is not to replace the human. It's really to be tools that can accelerate what humans can do. So we're very interested in the intersection of how humans use these kinds of systems. Brian already went through my background. The only thing I'll kind of highlight is I got bit by the AI bug when I was doing my PhD at MIT. I was working more on what we would call process control work, but turns out we can call process control things AI nowadays and get a lot more funding for it. And that was really exciting to see how these tools can be really, really useful in practice and enable systems to work to their like most efficient power. So I think I got really, really excited about that. I worked mostly on pharmaceutical systems at that time. But when I went to Berkeley, I got interested in other types of systems, and I started to see how broad the tools that we were building were. So I started working more on plasma processes. These are not plasma for fusion, but more for actually semiconductor etching type systems. So these are atmospheric pressure plasmas. But actually, another thing that I got out of my time at Berkeley was we spun out a company out of some of the work I had done, and that company is still actively going today. I serve as an advisor, but we're going through Series A round of funding now. So it's like just goes to show you I've been interested in AI for quite a while, and trying to really get these tools into practice. So I think that's what another thing I'm very excited about coming to UW. I was at The Ohio State University for the past 6 years and really like to build kind of my work around AI for science and engineering. And we started building a number of new algorithms and methods there. But I was a little bottlenecked in terms of collaborative opportunities. That was the real reason I was so excited to join here this past August. And as I'll talk about in a minute, like the opportunities for collaboration are endless. And I think this is really one of the biggest strengths that we have on campus is just the not only amazing set of people, but also how open and collaborative they are. And so I already have a number of projects starting that I'll talk a little bit about towards the end that can use some of these tools, I hope, for good. Just to give you a little background about where my group is. So right now my group sits at 10 PhD students. So four came from Ohio State and joined UW this past fall. Three are going to stay and finish off their time at OSU over the next few months. And I had three new that I recruited this cycle from the fall. One co-advised with Rose Hersansky. And I've been graduating, pretty steadily, about one or two students a year. So about four students over the past year and a half, and they're going to all kinds of different industries. Some in the tech industry, some more in the bio. Because I had a student working on a bio project, went to Johnson and Johnson. So my students are finding good job opportunities, and we're excited about where that will go. Just to tell you kind of where my research interests sit, I'd say, as I already mentioned, we really like to build AI methods that are really focused on science and engineering applications. So we're building methods at the core, and we're trying to use those methods to tackle real world problems, usually through collaborative means. We work on a variety of applications across the spectrum of scales. But the thing I think that's unique about my group is we try to really take a loop type approach here, right? We use our methods, apply them to applications, but we learn from those challenges and inform how we should actually make the methods work in reality. So we're very big on testing and innovating. We also don't just stop at the method side. We like to understand why the methods work so well. So we like to actually dive a bit into the theoretical or mathematical side of things, maybe to understand why they work so well, try to dive into where they could be missing. And then again, we bring that back and try to help us inform the method. So I think this kind of two-stage iteration works well. And I have students that usually try to sit on a boundary between one or both of these sides. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about kind of some of the core techniques we've been building on lately. This is not everything, but I think it'll give you a flavor for what we like to do in the lab. So the first one is really this notion of Bayesian optimization. And one of the big things we do is build these kinds of algorithms, trying to be very efficient with our trial and error search for applications, right? So just to kind of show you how this might work in practice, you might have an expert making choices about experiments to run. I put experiments in quotes because these don't have to be physical experiments. They could also be simulations or sort of hybrids of those. They collect data, and usually that data would go back to the expert, and the expert would directly make those decisions, right? Where we try to tweak things a bit is we send this data that's coming from the experiment to some machine learning type framework. But this machine learning type framework is not just naive machine learning. We say Bayesian here because we're trying to incorporate prior information, also usually seeded from the expert or from literature to help set the stage for how the learning will happen. And then once we have this whole system in place, we're now starting to actually make predictions, right? That's the whole reason we want to use machine learning is to make inferences about unseen scenarios. And these predictions are not just single kind of deterministic outputs. They're usually associated with some probability distribution because there's uncertainty attached to our predictions. And so we try to use all that information to inform what experiments we might want to pick next, right? And usually that comes into play by basically trying to quantify the informativeness of a future experiment. We then try to maximize that information content, helps recommend experiments back to the expert, or sometimes we can, with autonomy, skip over the expert and go right back to the next experiment that we set up and run. And I'll show you some of that in a little while in terms of robotic systems that can help us do that. But at the end of the day, the goal is to run this loop and to hopefully do this as efficiently as possible so that we don't have to go around it too many times and we can discover really, really interesting things from it. So just to give you a very kind of visual cue of how this would work, the top is that kind of Bayesian machine learning model I was talking about. You'll notice how we can have error bars associated with our data because there's uncertainty in our measurement process. And you see these blue lines and these curves, these are representing our uncertainty and our mean predictions. And as you notice, we're sort of adapting this model as we get more data. And the way that we decide what data to select is this bottom part, right? This is telling us how informative things are in the future. And you see these things really work hand in hand. At the beginning, we have less data, we have more uncertainty. We're trying to drive forward and reduce that uncertainty. And as we go along, it's telling us, oh, you've explored this space pretty sufficiently. Don't waste any more time, right? So it gives you nice stopping criteria as well. Now, at the end of the day, this sounds really nice, right? But how do you make it work in practice? The biggest challenge is actually setting this prior effectively, right? So most of the tools that you'll see, there are a lot of different codes available to do this kind of stuff nowadays. They use very uninformed type priors, which basically means they're assuming not much about the function. And that's going to basically imply you don't have a lot of valuable information to learn from over here, and you're going to have to collect a lot more data, right? So we try to come in is really try to swap this out with something that's a little bit more realistic in a real world problem. So we try to take in all sorts of different knowledge, data, structures, everything we can to help really frame the learning problem in a better way. And that hopefully helps simplify how much we have to go over this loop. And we've been doing this for a lot of different system classes. I won't bore you with all the kind of technical details, but the first class we've worked on a lot is actually networked functions, right? So most of our functions that we deal with, which would be input-output mappings, right? Most of them are not just a single function. They're sort of a composite structure of a bunch of functions, and we can exploit that structure really nicely to help drive our selection process. Another really important one is actually multi-information source. So this is where you might have different levels of theory in your simulations, or maybe you have different levels of fidelity in your experiments. And we can actually fuse all that information together into a learning problem where we can figure out how to optimize according to budget constraints, right? So maybe I can query a cheaper source more often than the expensive source, but I can do that in a way that I'm learning a correlation structure that helps me do better. And then the one that I'd say has been the most successful out of all the cases we've looked at is actually when we can map these really complicated high dimensional spaces, for example, how we represent molecules on a computer, to lower dimensional spaces and start to do searches over those spaces. So just to give you a flavor of how that works in practice, we built this algorithm, MolDays, that was published last year. And this is all about molecular discovery. And we impose a very different type of prior, which is basically we make a hard, sparse prior assumption over a certain type of descriptor space. These descriptors you can think of as things like molecular weight, but a little bit more complicated than that to represent molecules. And we modify the pipeline that I showed you earlier just to bring that information into the mix. But we keep searching and iterating, combining learning and optimization together and really hand in hand. And at the end of the day, it really matters what it can actually do. So I'll just show you a couple results. So this is a very popular benchmark problem where you're trying to search for a drug-like molecule over a compound set that's about 250,000 molecules. And so we're testing in this case about on the order of 80 to 100 options. So you can pick about 80 to 100 choices out of this 250,000, and you want to pick the ones that have the highest log P. So you can see it's a very data sparse problem because I can't query even a fraction of the space, but I want to try to get very high log P values. And we compare a number of different algorithms here to our algorithm in blue. And you notice at the end of the day, over replicates, over all types of different scenarios, we're consistently winning and getting higher values, which basically would imply, you're searching a lot less of the space than you would have if you did a naive type of search. The other thing I like to show people, because I think it's just an interesting thing to note, the regular way that you would do Bayesian optimization actually does worse than just picking these things at random, right? So this really shows you that changing that prior and aligning it to the problem has huge, huge benefits, right? And I think this is an underutilized thing in this space. Another example is this quantity related to organic electromaterials. So we have a collaborator where we're trying to find new sustainable battery materials, and we were looking at a property related to the cycle life stability. So in this case, it's about 100,000 molecules we're searching over. And every molecule, if we're going to simulate it on a computer, takes about 24 CPU hours. It's a pretty complicated calculation. And whenever my student first showed me this result, I didn't believe him. So I had to have him run it 2 times to double check. But we actually searched this 100,000 space and find at least a very, very good compound in about 20-ish evaluations. So we're testing a really, really small fraction of the space. Again, doing way better than other methods, especially the standard and the random search. And to really dive into why this works, it is actually changing that machine learning algorithm. We found about four interesting descriptors that correlate to the property we care about. And those descriptors are actively getting discovered as the process is learning. So that's what's kind of unique about the framework. And we can tell that the model is actually learning a lot better than if we didn't have that stronger prior that we imposed. And just to prove to you, I'm not like making up a couple of cherry-picked examples. We studied this across a number of other real-world data sets, and we found that consistently we actually can outperform the state of the art for many of these problems. So hopefully that gave you a little flavor of at least some of the kind of active learning stuff we do. Another area I'm very interested in, and I think is an underexplored kind of topic in machine learning, is this notion of symbolic regression. So what is symbolic regression? This is the idea that I'm going to build a model that has to have an analytic structural form. And what do I mean by that? It has to be basically like the models that we would build in chemical engineering, right? It's got to have operators that we understand, right? Pluses, minuses, divides, exponentials, right? Just standard operations that we can interpret. And they've got to work on our standard input spaces. So why would you use this compared to all the fancy models you might be hearing about nowadays? Well, the first thing is these are much more concise models, right? We can usually compress these models down to very, very few operations that it makes them easier to use and easier to store. They're more interpretable. I think this is the biggest thing we got interested in these models because of, is because you can really peek in the black box and understand what it's doing and why it's doing that. So if you use a big large language model, for example, nobody can tell you what's going on inside of that thing, and that's where all these kind of scares come from. So I'm personally very skeptical of using those models on, safety critical engineering systems. I would like a model that I can really unpack and test. So this can help us do that. And then the final thing, which I'll show you in a minute, which is this is not a proof, but it is a conjecture that when we have these nice simple equations, they can actually generalize better to data that we haven't seen yet. And what do I really mean by that? At the end of the day, again, machine learning is about predicting new things. It's always hard to actually test if your model is overfit to what you've seen and can't predict new things. I hypothesize that with these types of models, in some cases, we can actually start to predict truly new things that are extrapolating beyond what we've tested on, just like we've done, right, with a lot of physical models that we've built. But again, you probably are asking, does this really help in the real world? So I like to give this example, which is the earliest, of, at least that I know of, probably the earliest in human literature of actual symbolic regression being done. So this is discovering basically the planetary orbit that around Mars was an ellipse, right? And this is based on Johannes Kepler using Tycho Brahe's data that he collected over many, many years. And so in this case, this is not AI. This is HI or human intelligence. Johannes Kepler spent a lot of time testing out functions and finally arriving on the one that fit the data the best. And so really what we're just trying to do is automate the process of what Kepler did. But this type of analysis is really important, not just in physics, but also chemistry and chemical engineering problems. So we've studied in cases of like using this as a soft sensor to tie inexpensive real-time measurements to expensive offline measurements, emulating first principles models that are expensive to learning a reduced order model, and really the application set goes on and on. Of course, we're not the first people to think about this problem. At the end of the day, this is a very challenging computational problem that we can't formally solve globally, but we can come up with good heuristic algorithms, and that's what one of our approaches, semantic, is really built to do, is just an interesting algorithm to try to go after this challenging problem using, in this case, we build on the back end of PyTorch. So we're trying to use modern GPU accelerated computation to make this happen as fast as possible. And at the end of the day, again, I won't bore you with all the details. I just like to show an application where we did this with a chemist colleague back at Ohio State. And what we did is we actually took a bunch of DFT data, density functional theory data, trained our system on it, and proved over rigorous testing that our model could extrapolate to unseen chemistry. And then we used that model to actually design a number of new molecules. And so we found actually thousands of new organic electromaterials that could be used in batteries. And we found that the hit rate that we would get for a success of one of our tested molecules was about 3 times even an expert that had worked on this problem for many years trying to select molecules to test would be able to do. And some of our top performers out of the set that we were able to test actually greatly exceeded the state of the art. And we've patented this, and we have some companies that are looking at maybe licensing some of this work. So I want to end just a little bit about like, why did I decide to move here? And I said this earlier, but I just want to emphasize, to me, the interdisciplinary work being done at UW is like, you know, top in the world, right? And so I was really excited during the interview process and during the just conversations with the people, how many cool collaborations I could form. So within my first, less than a year here, I've already started a number of cool collaborations. I just want to highlight two because I think one of the things that I'm super excited about is again translating this technology to being in the lab. So Sebastian Kube, who's a assistant professor in material science here, he's been working on building this system we call the Alloy Bot. And the whole goal of the system is to actually be the first self-driving lab for button melt alloy discovery for high temperature alloys. And our goal, it's ambitious, is try to do this 100 times faster than what's done today. So just to put that in concrete terms, usually a expert would take about a week to synthesize and fully characterize a full composition. We're trying to push that to about 100 compositions a week. And this is obviously a big collaborative effort. It involves robotics, automation, and AI to try to really do this and close the loop. But from these videos down here, I can kind of show you, we've been making pretty good headway. We already can actually automate a lot of the weighing process. We can automate the melting with this really fast, high power electrodes that actually melt these alloys together. And we can actually fully close the loop. We just demonstrated this about a week ago with some of the image analysis that we put on top of the SEMs, a scanning electron microscope. So again, this is all in process, but I'm really, really excited to see where this can go. The other one I want to highlight is actually one that's led by George Huber in our department, this AI fixed cat system. So our goal here is to actually develop a multi-scale type of framework for reducing the time to discover heterogeneous catalyst. And again, a very ambitious goal to try to do this 10 times faster than it's done today. We were lucky enough to be selected for funding on this project by ARPA-E recently. And I will say that going through the process of negotiating and setting all the metrics and milestones has been a challenging one to say the least, but this is a super, super exciting system that I really believe could have a huge impact on discovering catalysts faster. Our key hypothesis here is that if we work on the stability aspect of the catalyst earlier, we'll be able to eliminate a lot of the kind of bad space that ends up hurting you downstream and hopefully discover really, really good, stable and high enough performing catalysts to be commercially viable. So anyway, and I have other projects. I just didn't want to go too long. So of course, really excited about my group. I need to update this picture. We're going to have a barbecue on Sunday, so I'll get a nice new picture at my new house in Wanakee. I don't live in Madison, I live in Wanakee, but we'll have a nice picture. And of course, very grateful for all the funding from different sources that have supported this, as well as the really, really wonderful collaborators that I have and am actively building at UW. And again, thanks for your attention. Happy to take questions if you have them.